Revenue isn't just about transactions. It's about creating ecosystems where value compounds across multiple stakeholders. Welcome to the Revenue Room, where we decode how leaders leading media, events, and data as a service businesses build sustainable, scalable, and accelerated growth revenue strategies. I'm Heather Holst-Knudsen, CEO and founder, H2K Labs and the Revenue Room. Today's guest transformed a regional food festival into a nationally recognized economic driver, built a portfolio of B2B and B2C platforms that serve over 100,000 industry professionals annually, and pioneered what she calls evolutionary management, a philosophy that treats every cultural movement as a revenue opportunity. Michelle Meter is CEO and co-founder of Fast Forward Events. Over 2 decades, she's proven that live experiences aren't cost centers. They're sophisticated revenue platforms when designed with intentionality. Her properties include the San Diego Food and Wine Festival, SommCon conference, and a growing portfolio of industry-specific marketplaces. What caught my attention? Michelle doesn't just produce events, she engineers economic ecosystems where consumer passion fuels B2B growth, where a single activation can generate ripple effects across multiple revenue streams. And today we're unpacking her playbook. Welcome, Michelle. I'm so excited to have you here today.
What a great intro. Thanks, Heather.
Oh, thank you. So I've really, it's funny, we've been in the same industry for a very long time, and it's just recently that you and I have connected.
Yeah.
First was at CISO, the Small Business Roundtable, then now at EVG, but we had actually asked you to speak at Revved Up, which is coming up in March, as part of our founder-led panel. So I'm really excited, but I had really no idea how, one, you built your business, and two, really how exciting it is across both the B2C and the B2B side. And I think there's some things you're doing that that you're working on with that for some new launches. So we'll dive into that.
Great.
All right. So you walked away from the predictable trade show circuit 20 years ago. Take us inside that decision. What did you see that made you build your career? Not only in building something different, but as I like to say, like diving off the cliff into the sea of entrepreneurship.
Yeah. I want to take even a bigger step back than that. Because I do, it's so interesting when you talk about our connection and how recently we really started to have a dialogue in this space, given, our tenure in this industry. I love hearing the background stories of where people came from and what is their origin story, because I think it all leads to understanding our collective psyche in this industry that we're in. So I like early on, I actually worked in publishing. And so my background is in media and in live media experiences on behalf of specialty interest publishing companies. So I used to work for Peterson Publishing, which at the time was the largest specialty interest publisher in the United States. They were acquired by EMAP, and so the story goes. But I was producing live experiences as a way for brands to connect with their audiences, with their consumers. And it was a really formidable learning ground that helped me understand the value of connecting, this element of buyer or in consumer and seller in like really authentic environments. And so I had that kind of as a early career training ground, and then ultimately went to work for DEMA, which is the Diving Equipment and Marketing Association show. And, while I was at Peterson, I was doing a lot in action sports and in active kind of recreational lifestyle events. So that set me up really, really well to understand the diving industry, also working in a little bit of editorial there. And then that led me to meet my current partner. And we really started looking at how, these early insights between experience as an economic engine, not just kind of looking at it as a sales floor, but really like experience as an economic driver. And we started looking at the food and beverage industry, at the fact that at the time, wine and spirits were just a rapidly growing and expanding category. And we decided the timing was right for us to take all this now backstory of like culture and storytelling, of community, to drive long-term value. And so we launched with San Diego Food and Wine. And then, like you said, that has now, really evolved into a B2B platform so that we were servicing both sides of the marketplace. We're able to service multiple stakeholders and kind of create connection on both sides, to compound, really compound value there.
I really want to get into that because I've always been fascinated by the hybrid model in the live event space, but I actually love live media. I like that that phrase. But so you went from working for somebody else to working for yourself, and you've been doing it now. Fast Forward Events is what, 20 years or how?
So 22 years, actually. Yeah.
Okay. So would you ever go back to working for somebody else?
I think, never say never. I think that the environment would have to be the right environment. But, this idea of creating and of going from seeing marketplace opportunity to ideation to research to development to launching something to seeing that materialize, like, that entrepreneurial spirit really does just kind of change your cell structure.
Yeah.
In a way that I think that, the working for someone else, I think I would wear a different hat under that lens. Instead of it working for someone else, it would be tapping into understanding the power of what someone with our experience, you and me, Heather, is where we're maybe cut from that same cloth, the power of what we bring to those ecosystems. It's a different mindset. I think there's also something different about the way that we're wired when everything that we do rides on our own dollar. We have to have a certain tolerance for risk in that sense, or sometimes lack of risk. when it's ultimately our money that we're gambling with. And so never say never, but I love being on the founder side of our business.
Yeah, no, I definitely, that's a big hard no for me. So I'm always like, and it's not because I don't like working with I love working with other people. I love, having clients. I love building this network we're doing. I love all of that. But I think once I'm so entrenched into running my own thing and walking the path I want to walk, it would be very hard for me to change that. But it is, it's lonely when you're doing it as a solo founder. And it's definitely, it's not like you and I are getting funding from other people. It's your own money, you're bootstrapping it. And I think very few people understand how stressful that is. So anyway, I just, I commend you for not only doing it so well, but actually thinking about a new launch, which again, I said I want to talk about in a little bit. But before we do that, and thank you for sharing that really exciting and really interesting background, rich fabric in your career history. Let's talk now about, though, something that you've mastered that I personally am fascinated with, which is the hybrid model of a B2C, B2B play, and not just the experience, but the whole customer journey management of that. Can you talk about how it works with one of your shows?
I'm going to stick kind of in our food and beverage sector because I think it's the best use case here. But as we talked about, we launched in the consumer side with our current business under Fast Forward. So we launched with a consumer-facing food and wine festival. And after a couple of years, because of my B2B background, I couldn't help but not look at the level of brands that we were bringing as exhibitors and sponsors and partners, and say, okay, well, I know they're here for consumer, but I also have access to this B2B audience. At the time, it was highly regional. And I knew that they had budget for great activities. And so I'm like, here's an add-on, here's a plus up, here's an opportunity for now you, while you're in market, to do all these consumer facing activities that you have, but let's now bolt on some B2B trade initiatives on top of this. So we launched with our wine and spirits conference as kind of an adjunct to San Diego Food and Wine. That started to grow in terms of volume size, the number of buyers that wound up registering, and it spun off into its own B2B platform and conference, which is now in San Diego and in Washington, D.C. So that became SommCon. At the time, this is pre-COVID, it serviced as a conference for mostly on-premise wine buyers, beverage directors, and sommeliers. That role has changed dramatically in our space. So now that product has evolved to service on and off premise buyers, wholesalers, importers, distributors of wine and spirits. The exciting thing for our team is that really within the food and beverage portfolio in our ecosystem, our sales team really has an opportunity to meet all objections. So, through this, if it's, I'm not looking to do consumer, I'm only looking to do trade. Great. We have a solution for that. I'm not looking to do trade. I'm only looking to do consumer. Great. We have a solution for that. I can't attend in person. I, am spinning my marketing spend to digital. Like, great. We have solutions for that. So we really have been able to look at it as an ecosystem vertical, not just like B2B or B2C. It's a whole platform that they can buy into. And so with that, we get like really good endemic brand development. So, traditional wine and spirits brands, tech and providers, service providers for the hospitality industry. That's on our B2B side. And on our B2C side, they also translate and participate. But then we have non-endemic depth there for more lifestyle oriented brands that we get to pull into our partnership model. So for us, it works incredibly well. For consumers on this, like each stakeholder is paying into these products for different value. So on the consumer side, they're looking for discovery and experience. And then on the brand side, they're looking for, of course, access and insights and commerce. And then what we like to say is like cultural relevance. And so for us, there's an incredible intersection here. And it's been a great model for us to follow.
No, it's you're mastering the you're dominating and mastering the vertical, and I like that.
It's not without complication, right? Because when we look at the journey, we have to follow the buyer across a portfolio of events. So the data side gets cumbersome, and it's something we continuously talk about and work through. We're in data health meetings right now, just to continuously look to make sure that we can understand, the lifetime value of our customer and in the way that we want to interpret the data. It's not without its complication, but it's a great opportunity to be a really viable and valuable resource to our buyer, because they get to play across their budget with us.
So let's talk about data then. I think when we last spoke at the Event Venture Group Bootcamp, you were talking about you have some proprietary systems that you've built to do what I call customer enablement, right? But you really do have significant data complexity in the B2C, B2B side, and really ensuring that your segments are hyper focused, and they mix if they need to mix, but really I can't imagine that they would. But so you have to really have some very serious data hygiene protocols in place, I would think.
We do, and I would it's constantly a work in progress. Um, it's something that we're constantly looking at and trying to improve. And certainly now, as the industry continues to evolve with AI, we're consistently looking at the interpretation of our data, how quickly we can better understand our customers through the way that we have them categorized within our database. We use a platform called Zoho, which is it's an enterprise solution. So we really do use it for our CRM, our sales management, our campaign management. All of our workflows, our project management, our internal people management. So it really provides. It's our brain trust. It's our hub for the business. The nice thing about it is that, there's one point of intersection within our organization, but it also has its downsides because there can be some limited integrations into it. But for us, with regards more to like the data health piece of it, I think we're constantly looking at redundancy. We're constantly looking at making sure that all the things that any business kind of tuning in right now is constantly plagued with. As an independent founder, sometimes we don't have like big resources to hire data houses to go in and consistently manage our systems. We have to really be mindful about having good hygiene in terms of how we're setting up our architecture to begin with.
Mm-hmm. No, we were just having this discussion today, about data hygiene. And listen, people come to us to help them with data. And if we're not walking the walk that we, talk, it's not good. But data hygiene is a tough one because it's constant, and people don't realize it's a constant. It's a real time. It's not like, it's definitely not every year. It's actually not even every half year. I think quarterly is probably the best people are going to get to. But if you really do have it set up correctly, you're at the you have automations that help you with data hygiene, at least let's say getting you to like 60-65% of keeping your data clean. And then you have to have your data evaluation at the end of a quarter. It's like, have we done well?
That and as your systems change, the way that you are categorizing your data has to change, right? And so, we've been using a certain system within Zoho that was kind of legacy, that kind of came through with our old system that we used years ago, and that's now outdated. That is servicing us the way that we need it to. And so we're shifting to something called modules, and that takes it's a lot. It's like taking and doing a whole new program shift, but it's the right thing to do because it allows us, from kind of a dashboard standpoint, to really understand what's happening within within all of our live events. So, at a glance, we're really able to see kind of all the holistic health, our data, our tracking, understanding our customers and how they're responding to our campaigns, in kind of, one snapshot view. And so, in order to get to there, we're going through this very painful exercise right now. It's not fun. But no, it's not fun, but it's necessary. And our team's excited to do it.
Well, I think the part I always tell my team is, it doesn't feel fun right now, but it's going to be super fun when all of that's over and we've got this, like, we're moving fast and we're not thwarted by data challenges.
That's right. Well, it's kind of like cleaning out your closet, right?
Yes.
It gets worse before it gets better.
Yeah, totally.
Right now, the clothes are out and they're kind of all piled up in clumps, and now we're kind of cleaning.
No, absolutely. Talk to me. That's interesting. I have two questions here, like, to spin off this, and then we'll move on to another topic. But the first question I have is with sponsors, and that is, I would imagine the sponsors that are there for the B2C side have very different expectations and perception of ROI, right? are understanding or agreed on what success looks like. It's a consumer, I would imagine it's very much about quantity, and engagement. But there are, and maybe you answer this question. I'm just assuming that they don't need as much like first party data around the consumer side. On the B2B side, clearly, I would imagine the data requirements and the ROI is much steeper.
Yes and no. So on the surface, you're right. The sponsors on the consumer side, they're looking kind of top line, right? How many people are you going to have? What is the demographic makeup? And usually in our case, they want to understand, some economics. So they want to understand like household income and things along those lines. That's very surface, right? The deeper we can go though, and I think this is also comes out of our understanding of B2B. This is the beautiful space that our team gets to live in because we understand both. We get to take the best of both and kind of allow both properties to learn from each other, right? So we try to go at least one layer deeper to deliver some data that our sponsors may not be asking for, but we know is going to help empower our sales team to justify and substantiate their spend with us, right? And so, we look at these consumers, not as a cost center, which I think can be traditional in some ways. You look at them as an expense. We look at them as drivers of demand signals, right? So if we can help drill down to say, we know our audience is planning a trip. We know that they're going to be traveling in the year ahead. I might have a target next year to grow our portfolio of DMOs that are participating in our event, or international destinations, or I might be targeting an airline partner, or and so I'm going to make sure that I understand and can substantiate to that potential brand through my data, so it's targeted on our part. We want to make sure. Do you know what I'm saying? So,
absolutely.
So they can be demand drivers. So yes, the brands might say, this is my desired outcome. This is what I'm looking for. But really, we kind of know better. And we know better based on what those brand marketers have to go back and sell their teams on to justify the spend with us. So that's on the consumer side. On the B2B side, it's not too different from some of the things that we already know and look at. They're looking to understand volume, what kind of deal volume, what does deal flow look like by participating in our event. And so the more we can help them understand our audience and the sales cycle and substantiate that, the better.
So two things I caught from that. One is you're using data not just to support the sales effort. Like, we've got the right people, look at their, the income level, high income earners that spend a lot. You're actually looking at data that that's driving their interests. So, and you can use that in two ways. One is for to help people who, sponsors who are coming in saying, we've got a group that is absolutely going to be traveling and so you may want to have messaging or things that relate to this to drive to those preferences. But more importantly, which I think is just super cool, is you actually can go after adjacent markets. Like, the first thing that popped into my head is like wine tours, or like to Italy, or wine and cooking types of education, because so it's not just wine tasting, it's adjacencies.
That's exactly right. And it's not only does it help substantiate what maybe we are seeing or we're thinking, or an area that we're wanting to expand and grow the event, and not just in our this portfolio, but in other shows too. And I think this applies to your to B2B modeling as well. I don't think it's just specific to consumer. I think it's a smart way to look at where you might be planning to go, looking a year, 2 years out, letting data help be a predictor for the brand on what their potential ROI can be. And I think it proves marketplace relevance for us. So for us, it also justifies pricing. So when we're looking at our pricing structure and our sales team, it gives our sales team confidence in holding the line with our pricing, and we can say, no, this is why this matters. This is why this is relevant. This is what our audience is telling us. And so we're already kind of pre-qualifying ourselves when we're going out to our brand partners by doing it that way.
That's actually pretty advanced from a sales perspective, that you're empowering your sales teams to use data to help them not just sell, but manage the negotiation.
Yeah. I mean, it raises the perceived value of what we're putting in front of them. And in terms of the renewals too, it really reduces the friction on any renewal.
Where are you getting some of this data? Is it primarily or all form fill, or are you extracting like first party insights from behaviors that are happening on your digital assets?
It's mostly done at the time of registration. So that's really how we're tracking it right now. Though there's so much available out there now to help, analyze our audience, where they're coming from. We just did a big audit on our consumer platform, and we were actually kind of undervaluing some of the travel demographics, some of the analytics behind where people are coming from, how long they're staying in market. And so most of that comes at the point of additional engagement when they're buying their ticket and or registering for our programs. We do have, and we do extract data from our web analytics. And so we have, a lot of robust data there as well. But most of the granular stuff that we're talking about comes from being able to extract that when they're engaged with us, and we're asking them for some of those qualifying questions.
All right, excellent. So just if you give us an example, I know because I saw I can't remember if it was a presentation or it was something I saw just that you shared about these very unique activations, like the element of surprise. And I think the one that stands out in my head is the porta potty one.
I know everybody talks about that one. And again, this is the thing that I love about the fact that we get to live in such, a vibrant space with consumer activations and, our brand partners that engage with us. I want to touch on something really quickly because I want to talk about the porta potty piece. There's a lot of fun stuff to unpack there, but when we're looking at these activations, the psychology behind it is that all activations should hit multiple revenue line items within our events. So yes, there's that initial sponsorship bucket that's going to come in, or partnership bucket. But then we're going to look and say, how does that activation wind up hitting our attendee revenue line item? So does it have social engagement attached to it? What kind of marketing partnership is pulled through with it? So we're able to look and say, okay, based on this program, there's we got residual media value, or how else are we valuing that partnership outside of the initial cash upfront? So those are all important considerations for us. And when we're developing these programs, we have a menu that we have to, out of necessity. Sometimes our clients are like, please just send me a handful of things and I want to pick from something. So we have that. That's like our in case of emergency, break the glass. That's our team's last resort. What we always want to do is we want to get on the phone, and most of our programs come through a conversation. So it's about, what is it you're trying to accomplish? What are your pain points? What have you done at other events that haven't worked? What does success look like to you? So asking, our team is trained to ask all these questions. And then really developed the program in conjunction with with a partner. So it's usually not something that already exists. And so this is the case with the porta potty. So we were on with an agency, and they were it was on behalf of Monkey Shoulder, which is a spirit brand, and they were coming. They wanted to do a series of pop-ups at food and wine experiences. We, of course, we were working to get the budget, and they said, what is something, help us kind of think what we might be able to do. What is something at these festivals that exists that you see all the time? And someone on my team said porta potties. I was like, oh great, don't mention that. It's the ugly part of our event. And they're like, that's it. So they actually came in and they created a facade, a line of porta potties, and it looked like our line of porta potties, except one door was orange and it had a monkey on it, the Monkey Shoulder logo. And it was under embargo. We were not allowed to talk about it in advance. I'm like, well, how is this going to hit on all these other line items? It's not. And so, I was kind of initially not in favor of it. I thought that's going to be a cool activation, but if I can't mention anything about it, that's not going to drive people. That's not going to increase my gate. And so it did not hit that bucket for me, but what it did is it created this viral, kind of content explosion on site. The moment someone, the first person who discovered it told other people who told other people, and it became the biggest hue within our entire festival. The social media engagement was off the charts. We had tons of post-event coverage on it. And it really led to our not only our team being really excited to have something like that happen within our event, but also a lot of brand calls after, because they realized, our product, our venue, our event is not just something to come and park a stall at, park a 10 by 10, that it's something for them to get creative about, a way to create, some breakthrough moments with their customer, to create, something residual that will last beyond the live event environment. So it was a great case study for us.
Every B2B person listening to this podcast right now needs to take this as a lesson. I'm like, already my brain's like, well, how can we do something like this at Revved Up?
Yeah.
The app, the benefit you got from that, to me, and you mentioned it all, so you get it, but the on-site excitement, and I got to be there, and fear of missing out, and just the mystery beforehand. So I think that was, spectacular. But the other part was the halo effect you got on social, and the posts and the photos, and you really gave your event, because of that one activation, just natural organic exposure to just a much greater audience.
And it raised the bar, right? And so, other brands that did not want to be outdone. And so in subsequent years, and this is really earlier on in our program, but in subsequent years, it has become the thing where it's like, what are the brand activations going to be at this experience? And so that has now become part of the narrative of why people attend, because it's just exciting and unique. And it's like, every corner that you turn, you're like, oh, wow, what's this? This kind of surprise and delight, approach to designing your event.
Yep. Yeah, no, I love that use case. Are there any sort of data metrics around it that you've gathered, or should we save that for Revved Up?
I wish we were better about looking at the the data behind the individual activations. We do not have deep insights into customer recall or anything like that we're tracking on behalf of the brands. I think our best metric is, our customer retention. And so that's probably the best way that we have to gauge whether or not the product is working. We have low turnover with respect to our brands and our partners and our sponsors. It's an area that keeps growing year over year. Our recidivism with regards to our attendee is, kind of on par with other averages. So I think that's probably our best, our best modeling behind it.
So I would actually add two there just for you to think about moving forward one is if there's a way to track the social media impact in terms. That's, I think, one I would be very interested in. And then another one is, and hopefully I'll be bringing them to Revved Up, is a facial. It's not recognition; it's facial intelligence. And
Yes.
so, yeah. So I think
I've seen it. Where our team's looking at those platforms, they're costly, and so
you get the sponsor to pay. It's an add-on to their. It's an add-on to their sponsorship.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I do like that.
Yeah,
okay,
right. We'll keep talking about that.
But we do, we definitely do have like social metrics, and so we definitely track, engagement on behalf of our brands in terms of what our audience is saying with them on social during the event and post event. But that we do have that.
Yeah. Well, you and I can brainstorm also. I'm sure we can come up with even more. I just think there's such a heavy duty impact on that wow. And I love the fact that it raises the bar with the other sponsors, because again, your sponsors are such a core part of the experience for your attendees. Like you need a FOMO effect that, inspires and delights. So, all right, just as for the sake of time, I have to move on. And it's actually a great segue, which is, and I'm hoping I'm connecting the dots here. So the events industry, and I would imagine especially yours, we all faced challenges during the pandemic. We couldn't do business as usual. We had to figure out new ways of doing things, but it also gave us a lot of time to think about the future when events came back and business model evolution. So one, how did you spend that time in terms of influence on what you're doing today? And is part of that thinking driving, if you're ready to talk about it, great. If not, I totally get it. But this new launch that you're thinking through.
Yeah. So I don't know, Heather, when the pandemic hit for us, we went into fix it mode. We sent our team home, like everybody. We got together with our leaders. I said, we've got, I don't know that we're going to be back in person. So we've got 2 weeks to figure out how to start generating some revenue, or else we might have to start letting go of our team. And I don't want to let go of our team. So let's the way I approached it was not just in terms of like longevity of the business or anything. I was purely in survival mode with respect to preserving my talent, protecting my team, and making sure that they can make their mortgages and that they could, take care of their families. And so it was protectionist. And that probably comes with the lens of a small business, right? I don't know that the big guys can always make the decisions the same way. That's how we had to approach us. So we looked at, we created entirely new products that were, we realized our brands, at the time we had an event series called Editor Showcase. They were brand to press events in New York, small events, but really good revenue model behind them. We realized that we couldn't get the brands in front of the media. So we created a box, and we literally called it Pitch Box. So I created a new kind of sub event called Pitch Box Media, where the brands would send us the product. We'd put it in a box, and it was like a subscription based service, like a Fabletics, or not Fabletics,
that Fabletics is one of them for sure. Yeah.
So so you get a box, and so we did that, and it saved our company. We were able to bring in close to the same amount of revenue that we would have brought in from the live event, and we switched. We had a new website, a new business. Everything launched within 30 days, and our team was off and running. Our sales team just had a new product to go sell off of. We created live webinars like everyone did, but in our space, the tasting experience for beverage is really critically important. So we partnered with a group to send out the wines to buyers, and they were called buyers forums. And so we held reoccurring buyers forums for all of these international markets that were needing to get in front of the customer. So we just fixed it.
That's incredible.
Some of that survived, and we still have, some residual of those programs still in place. Some of it didn't because the market returned to live experiences and it just no longer held its relevancy. And so that's kind of how we did it. So some of it kind of rolled into what we do, and some of it we sunsetted.
Well, what brilliant ideas you came up with. So really, really. So just kudos
necessity
to
is
you.
the mother of all invention, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So so can you want to talk about what you're working on now, or do we want to not?
Well, what I'm happy to talk about is I think that, even after being in the business for 20 years, I think that we're kind of entering a new phase into our company where we're really leaning into a more diversified model. We've been predominantly in food and beverage, some health and lifestyle. And we have some new launches that we're working on, and some new partnerships that are pushing us into different industry verticals that I think are exciting and important for our team. I think when we're looking at our revenue model, we need resiliency. So that way, when there's compression in an industry or some downturn economically, that other sectors of our market of other industry sectors can help support. Yeah. So we're evolving the business. We've got some new digital media products that are coming on board to help support those new launches, and I'm happy to talk about it in a little bit down the road.
Yeah, no, sure. I think the important point here, and I think it's very interesting for our listeners, is the smart move of revenue diversification. And it's not just a diversification of a revenue stream, it's diversification of industry expertise, right? And industry. So that's, I think, very part one. I think the other part is, and I what I think I can share is, from what I know, is that it's actually quite a departure from food and beverage, like food and wine and food and beverage. So again, because you're an entrepreneur, there's big risk there, but you're willing to take it because, one, obviously the business is saying we need to do this and diversify, but two, your curiosity is driving, and your interest and and courage and grit is driving you into that realm. And I think the third thing, I think it's B2B. It's a B2B focus, correct?
It is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, when you're ready, we'll be excited to dive into it further. But congratulations on fostering that new launch.
Thank you.
All right. So we're coming up at the end, and I did want to ask this question, and that is just because I actually found this interesting, because you're very much like me on this part, which is women in leadership, going from why are we celebrating, I'm just like the rest of them, I'm no different, why are we advocating, to now really understanding that building diverse teams is really important, especially in the media and events industry, which has been heavily dominated. Especially, I would say, if there's a glass ceiling, there's definitely one here, at that CEO level. What changed your mind?
I think it's a delicate balance. When I'm walking into events that are focused on CEOs, I walk into the room wearing my hat as a CEO, not necessarily wearing my hat as a woman who is a CEO, right? That said, I recognize and I understand the important value of mentorship across the team, but in particular with women, because I think that oftentimes there's this hesitancy as women to knock on and open doors, to ask, to insert yourself into a place where you think you belong. And I think that there's a dynamic where men inherently do that. And so I want to make sure that we're creating an environment to where I'm encouraging all people on my team to feel empowered to say, like, how do I get over here? And allow me to be the connector and the conduit for that. I'm really proud this past year. Two of my senior leaders were just awarded the Trade Show Executives Women to Watch. Kristen on my team is an active participant in IAEE, and she won the Chapter Leaders Award. So, I want to make sure that I'm providing opportunity, access, getting my team on boards, getting them on panels, and putting them in places where maybe they just didn't even consider they should be.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important for us to do that for all of our team, but especially for populations of our workforce that don't inherently do that for themselves.
Yep. Agree. I think also just with one, I definitely have the issue of asking for things. Yeah. It always used to amaze me. They're like, Heather, can sell ice to Eskimos. I'm like, I don't know where they got that from. Because that's really not the case. But I think asking is it's like I'm always asking for quietly tipping around for a favor versus yeah. So I totally get that one, and I also think the bigger one is asking for mentorship.
Yeah, I think asking for mentorship is great. I want to commend you, Heather, because I think that what you have done in terms of your advisory council, you're building a great cohort to, help you look at and evaluate the program that you're building. And I think that's you asking. That's you saying, can you be here? Can you do this? And recognizing your value of what you're bringing to the marketplace and the industry. The industry needs what you're providing as much as you need them to help counsel you along the way. Yeah. And I think we need to get out of our own way with that. I don't, with age comes wisdom maybe, but I've stopped worrying about not asking. I'd rather ask and be told no than sit and wonder what if. And so, I've just kind of gotten past my fear of that, but it takes time for us to develop that skill, I think.
Well, and this I think is for anybody. Something I've learned with age is that when you are given the gift of mentorship and advisory, be an incredible listener.
Yeah.
I listen now, and actually, I'll just close out with this. So Matt York at Revved Up last year, we had an advisory board meeting. I was exhausted, and then this is why I won't do one before this year's Revved Up. And I was like, but they're giving all this advice. I asked him to be there. They're giving me all this advice. And he asked me a really tough question. He said, and I know it doesn't seem tough, but it was tough because I was so in it. I hadn't really. He's like, what do you want to come out of Revved Up? For me, I was like, I just want to survive. I want to walk out. I want people to be happy. It was all of this, I want a high NPS score. I didn't have a concrete, what do I want out of Revved Up? I'm walking into this year's Revved Up with a very clear, what do I want out of it? And every time I think about that, I say, thank you, Matt York, for making me think this way. And I listen to you. Yeah. But maybe when I was younger, I might have blown it off. I don't know. But listening is so key.
Yeah, I agree. And that's a through line to our teams too. I recognize and understand that I don't have all the answers anymore, that I have a gut instinct on where and how and what, but our team, they inform all of those decisions. And so listening to them as much as listening to our mentors and our sponsors and, our advisors it all kind of rolls up into how we package our products and ourselves. So.
Well, we really ran out of time, so I only have one rapid fire, and then I'll have to close out. Okay. And I ask this of everybody because we're building a book club on Revenue Room Connect. What is the best business book you've read?
Ooh, the best business book. I just read a book on scaling, which was really interesting. And I am blanking on the name and title on it right now. So it's probably not going to serve you well for this podcast, but
you can send it to us. We'll put it in the.
I will send it. It really has informed a lot of the way that we look at our business. And not lowering our floor. So there's a lot of conversation about chasing your floor, and it's really shifted the way that we look at the pricing around our product, and again understanding our value in comparison to our competition.
Awesome. Yeah. All right. With that, Michelle, thank you so much for joining us. If anyone wants to connect with Michelle, we will include a link to her LinkedIn profile in the show notes, as well as to her website. And before I close, the conversation doesn't stop here. It continues inside Revenue Room CXO, the only network where CEOs and their revenue critical teams turn AI disruption into growth strategy. And if you want to experience that thinking live, join us at Revved Up 2026, March 23rd through the 24th at the Vinoy in St. Pete, Florida, where the future of data, AI, and revenue leadership take the main stage. We'll share links to learn more about both Revenue Room CXO and Revved Up in the show notes. And if you enjoyed today's conversation, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, leave a review, and share this episode with other revenue leaders in your network. We'll see you next time on the Revenue Room.